Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here again. It's been a few days since I posted my initial review of the first two episodes of The Legend of Korra. I've been thinking a lot about the show since then, and I just wanted to share with you a few things that have occurred to me since then. The first point is something that was actually raised by Zeno509. I've got some notes written down here on it, so that's why I'm going to keep looking over in this direction from time to time. And they brought up an interesting point about how in the first two episodes, both two times, Korra goes off and does things that she's explicitly not told not to do, and she's not only never punished for this, she's basically given what she wanted anyway, and that's being, of course, when she runs away from the South Pole to Republic City, she's allowed to stay, and then when she defies Tenzin and runs off to the pro bending match, she's allowed to stay on the pro bending team. So, why is this? Why does Korra not suffer any consequences from this? Is this a good thing? Is this going to lead her down a bad path? Is this setting a bad example? And I think it's a little too early with just two episodes to really draw any firm conclusions to this. So with that said, I'd like to step back and instead look at this from the perspective of one of the themes that was sometimes touched on in the first Avatar series. And that theme is that of destiny. Now, I'm going to have to step aside for a minute to sort of use another example, but I'll come back to why this is important to Avatar. Let's look at another series where destiny is a very, very big deal, and that is Star Wars. Okay? Now in Star Wars, like Korra, we've got Anakin Skywalker. Now, Anakin is somebody who, from the time he was 9 years old, was believed to be the chosen one of ancient Jedi prophecy, the guy who would bring balance to the Force. He was trained, again, from the time he was 9 years old, to fulfill this destiny, and he ended up growing into a very skilled, very powerful, but sort of obnoxious, sort of annoying teenager. And, in a lot of ways you could say the same of Korra. Although, to be completely fair to Korra, she's nowhere near as bad as Anakin is. Especially Attack of the Clones Anakin, but boy, there's really not a whole lot of good things you can say about Attack of the Clones. But anyway, Star Wars, Destiny. Again, it's a big thing. But the idea of destiny, I think, is also something that had a place in the Avatar world. My favorite example of this is in season 3. Aang flat out says, and I'm pretty sure I'm saying this word for word, he says to Zuko, "I think you were always meant to be my firebending teacher." Now he doesn't say the word destiny here, but I really can't think of a better word for what's going on there. And another thing is that the Avatar in general, it is their destiny, the Avatar's role, to try and bring balance to the world that they live in. So, and again, Anakin and Korra, they do have these parallels. And to bring it back to what's going on in the first two episodes, when Korra goes to run off, Katara comes across her and basically says, if this is what you think you need to do, go ahead and do it. It's Katara quite literally giving Korra her blessing, saying, if you feel this is your destiny, you should do this. And then, again, when she goes off and runs off to the pro bending match, that is what triggers her to finally take the first steps on learning how to be an airbender. So, it's my feeling that if Tenzin believes this, if he does believe that this is part of what Korra's destiny is, if this is what will help her achieve her destiny, then, it's quote unquote the will of the Force, or the Avatar spirit, whatever. You understand what I'm saying. So if that's what's going on, then punishing Korra for that doesn't really make sense. If he's doing what she was destined to do, and doing things that will ultimately help her to become a true Avatar, to bring balance to the world, then what exactly is the point of punishing her? And besides, he's not her father exactly. What is it that he's supposed to be able to do here? I mean, you can't exactly take her laptop out to a field and shoot it, or say no more whatever horrible music 17-year-old girls like nowadays. I honestly have no clue whatsoever. So again, that's just me throwing out an idea of a theme that I think we may see come into play as the series wears on. Now, let's go and let's talk about the metal bending cops that I didn't get the chance to mention in my previous episode. I'm sorry, my previous video. First of all, wow, these guys are pretty seriously cool. I mean, they were swinging around on those cables like Spider-Man. They look an awful lot like samurai in a lot of ways. Actually, one of the first things that jumped out to me when I was watching them in action was, if you know your Japanese histories, they reminded me of these guys that I'd read about and seen in some Japanese movies called the Shinsengumi. And they were, to very, very quickly simplify, a bunch of ex-samurai who were basically became cops in Tokyo shortly after the Meiji Restoration. Now, again, there's a whole lot more history and things going on with these guys than what I've just said there. I'm just saying that's the first thing that came to my mind. Maybe there's some parallels there. A little too early to tell. If you want to know more about them, I'll just put a link in the description. Again, I'm just saying this is the first thing that jumped into my mind. Anyway, so the thing about one of the interesting things about these guys is that, okay, obviously they're a cadre of elite earthbenders who have been trained to become metal benders. So that one thing that raises my mind is, are all the cops in Republic City metal benders? Okay, well, even if they aren't, are all the cops, well, are they all benders anyway? Now, if there's like a firebender criminal, maybe you don't want to send the guys out who are covered in armor that, if they get hit with fire, is going to melt and burn them horribly. Maybe you want to send a waterbender after that guy, where it would be more likely to be an even fight. Okay, so that brings one other question to my mind, though. If all the cops are all the cops benders? Are there no normal, regular human beings who are policemen? Now, I'm sure that we will have the answers to these questions in fairly short order, but it's something to think about. And it's another thing is, if I'm a member of, if I'm a non-bender who lives in this city, and let's say the police are all benders, or maybe the majority of the police are benders, or the rank and file guys, the grunts of the policemen are ordinary people, but the guys who have the real authority, the real power, they're all benders. Is it really going to be so unreasonable that I'm not happy about this situation? That I'm afraid? That I don't worry, if the police, kind of get out of control, if the police become, like has so often happened in the history of the real world, just an extension, an arm, a puppet, whatever term you want, of an oppressive group at the top of society, what do I have that I can stand against this? I'm going to be scared, and I probably have good reason to be. And then imagine that this happens, and there's this guy who comes along who says, you know what, what's happening in this city is wrong. You should be willing to strike back. The people with these powers, they're keeping you down. They're taking things that belong to you. They're interfering with your ability to live your life the way you want to pursue, as they say, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, if that's what's going on, then it's not really so surprising that ordinary people would start flocking to Amon's cause. Now again, we're only 2 episodes in, so it's a little too early to be drawing a whole lot of conclusions. I'm just saying things that are coming to my mind as I'm watching this that come from my knowledge of real-world history. But, there are plenty of examples throughout history of exactly this sort of thing happening. Good people rallying to causes like this simply because they're scared or they're upset or they're feeling put down. and a lot of really bad people gaining a lot of power because of it. With the greatest example of all being the fact that Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in a democratic election. Now, okay, Godwin's Law and all this other good stuff, I'm just going to leave it at that. But I think it's a thing worth pointing out. And one other thing, as long as we're talking about the police, is Lin Beifong. Now, again, we've only seen her a little bit. It's really too early to drawing a lot of hard conclusions about her character. But the thing that, in thinking about her, has occurred to me is that she's obviously a very, law and order, by the book sort of person. So, one thing is she one of those people who has become so entrenched on the side of law and order and the letter of law that she sort of neglected the spirit of the law, real, true justice, which, just like in the real world, can be and often is very different than what's the law on paper. And if that's the case, then, can she stand there as the hard person, the law and order by the book type, against Tenzin, who's maybe going to be a little bit more of the, okay, this is Korra's destiny, we kind of have to cut her some slack, blah 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 blah, and if that's what happens, well, okay, there's conflict there, just like in the first 2 episodes where Korra gets busted. She and Tenzin are kind of at each other about this. They're remaining very polite about it, but you can see there's some obvious tension. And I think it would be interesting, Korra, Lin Beifong represents the person within the system who realizes that there's a problem and that the system needs to change. Now, again, this is just sort of me throwing out an idea of what I think may happen. And like I said earlier, in my previous video, one thing that Korra is going to have to learn is that she can't punch these social problems away. She's going to have to work with people to bring these changes about. And I think that Lin is someone who could be one of those people. She, I think, is probably a good person who Korra could work with to help change the system from within. But, there's always the balance of that, the change of the system from within and changing the system from without. And I think that's a theme that could really become an ongoing common thing as this series progresses. Okay, I'm just about out of my 15 minutes here. I got a lot more things I want to talk about, but we'll come back to those in another video. Until then, I'll catch you guys later. And of course, please comment, rate, and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later.